when my husband worked overtime and his studio exploded, leaving no remains. My best friend Sophia told me the news. I only responded with a faint, "Oh." But Sophia was frantic, bombarding me with calls and texts, urging me to rush to the scene to identify him. Without hesitation, I blocked her and immediately booked a flight overseas. In my past life, when I heard the same news, I had dropped everything and rushed to his studio, only to be met with a handful of cold ashes. Sophia later told me that before his death, my husband, Ethan, had confided in her, saying I had racked up massive debts from gambling. He had wanted a divorce but was terrified because I had threatened him. If he left, he'd have to shoulder the enormous debt. Even my own mother, with tear-filled eyes, accused me of frequenting casinos and bringing men home in the middle of the night. But I had cherished Ethan like a treasure. I had just bought him a luxury watch worth hundreds of thousands, and I had never gambled or done anything remotely close to the accusations. Yet, in the face of everyone's relentless blame, I called the police to prove my innocence. At the explosion site, they found my diamond necklace, and forensic experts even discovered traces of my DNA. With no way to explain, I was condemned as a vicious woman, a husband-killing demon. My mother, overwhelmed with grief, testified against me in court and took over my business empire. In prison, I faced constant retaliation and was eventually murdered. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn, back to the day of the explosion. "Darling, no matter how important work is, please take care of your health," Ethan said, placing a bowl of nourishing soup on my desk. His voice was gentle, but I couldn't suppress the chill that ran down my spine. 5 years ago, I had a car accident. Ethan, who happened to be passing by, had saved me and taken me to the hospital. We fell in love and later married. To the outside world, he was the perfect husband, attentive, caring, and considerate. If it hadn't been for the recording Sophia played for me in my previous life, Ethan accusing me of gambling debts and threatening him, I never would have guessed that the husband who shared my bed had long harbored resentment against me. "Darling, why do you seem so distracted today?" Ethan, dressed and ready to leave for work, asked with concern, looking at the man who had once been my closest companion. My heart raced uncontrollably. Today was the day he left for his studio to work overtime, only for an explosion to take his life. When I arrived at the scene in my past life, there wasn't even a complete body left, just a charred pile of ashes. Holding that pile of ashes had been gut-wrenching. But what cut even deeper was Sophia, my best friend, publicly accusing me of orchestrating Ethan's death to claim his assets. She said Ethan had sought her help before his death, claiming I had cheated on him, gambled, and threatened to kill him if he pursued a divorce. As I tried to defend myself, my mother arrived. I broke down, hoping for her support. But to my horror, she rebuked me in front of everyone. "Ethan has been so good to you. How could you do this? Haven't I told you countless times that once you're married, you should settle down? But you stole his salary card to gamble, brought strange men home, and ruined his life. Even if the love is gone, how could you be so heartless? Split the money with him and let him go. Why drive him to his death?" Her every word was like a dagger, painting me as a shameless, heartless woman. My feeble attempts to defend myself were crushed under her accusations. The crowd's curses and condemnation engulfed me. When the police arrived, I thought salvation had come, but instead, they presented damning evidence, records of my alleged affairs, gambling debts, and even Ethan's psychological counseling sessions. My diamond necklace and fingerprints were found at the explosion site, irrefutable proof. Surrounded by a furious mob, I had no strength to fight back. People sneered. "She looks so decent, but behind the scenes, she's pure evil. He was so good to her, and yet she caused his death. A woman like her deserves to be torn apart." Someone in the crowd yelled, "At least her mother still has a conscience. Hurry up and execute her. Make her pay for the victim's life." The enraged mob turned on me, attacking with shards of glass from the explosion site. Scorching metal fragments tore through my skin, leaving me covered in wounds. My face was permanently scarred with hideous marks. Someone in the crowd held up their phone, streaming the chaos live. Millions of viewers flooded into the stream, watching the scene unfold. Amid the overwhelming insults and curses, I endured the most venomous verbal abuse imaginable. In the end, it was my own mother who handed me over to the authorities, sending me behind bars. Life in prison was hellish, and targeted abuse from other inmates only hastened my demise. Before I died, I still couldn't comprehend why my gentle and caring husband, Ethan, would conspire with my best friend, Sophia, to frame me for gambling and infidelity. Nor could I understand how the mother who had loved me so deeply could fabricate such lies and push me to my death. This time, I must uncover the truth and seek justice for myself. Feigning calm, I watched Ethan closely. As he prepared to leave, I gently grabbed his hand. "Darling, could I borrow your phone? Mine's out of battery, and I need to give my assistant some instructions." Without hesitation, Ethan handed me his phone. "The password's your birthday. You know that," he said with a relaxed smile, turning his back to me to pack his briefcase. His casual demeanor and complete lack of suspicion unsettled me even more. The calmer and more natural he appeared, the deeper my unease grew. This seemingly open and honest attitude felt riddled with hidden clues. Excusing myself, I went into the study and quickly began searching through his phone. I checked his contacts, social media apps, photo gallery, every possible place where evidence might be hidden. But no matter how thoroughly I searched, I found nothing suspicious. There were no female contacts other than me, and no communication with Sophia at all. His phone was filled with reminders of me. Our photos were everywhere, even set as the background of his messaging apps. He didn't look like a man harboring resentment toward his wife or planning a divorce. "Sweetheart, I've got to go now." Ethan's gentle voice called from outside the study, pulling me out of my confusion. I hesitated, then tugged at his sleeve. "Can you stay home today? Just for me? Don't go to the studio." Ethan smiled indulgently and ruffled my hair. "With a wonderful wife like you, I have to work even harder. The new project is at a critical stage. I need to oversee it personally today." Feigning a pout, I replied, "So your work's more important than me?" He chuckled softly. "Silly, you're my entire world. With a wife as beautiful as you, I'd love nothing more than to stay by your side every day." His handsome face was filled with affection as he leaned down to place a gentle kiss on my forehead. "I love you the most. Don't overthink things." The doubts in my heart only deepened, but I made sure not to let them show. Not long after Ethan left, Sophia suddenly arrived. "Why didn't you call ahead so I could prepare for your visit?" "Sophia?" I asked warmly. My mother, hearing her arrival, quickly walked out of the kitchen with a welcoming smile. "Sophia, come in and sit in the living room," she said politely. The two of them exchanged pleasantries, but their interaction was courteous and distant, showing no sign of any private relationship. I stood up to make tea, quietly observing Sophia's every move. She carried an elegant box of imported fruit, gracefully smoothing the hem of her skirt. "I brought this especially for you and your mother to enjoy," she said with a warm smile. My mother selected the freshest fruits, washed them carefully, and handed some to me. "Try it. It's a thoughtful gesture from Sophia," she said encouragingly. I forced myself to eat, my emotions in turmoil. Ever since losing my father 5 years ago, my mother and I had relied on each other. I managed the family business, fighting battles on the front lines, while she meticulously cared for every detail of my personal life. I had always believed we shared the closest bond between mother and daughter, but in my previous life, she had pushed me into an abyss from which I could never return. Noticing my distraction, Sophia asked with concern, "Yao, what's wrong? You seem so preoccupied. Should we go to the hospital to get you checked out? I can take you." She reached for the car keys in her bag. I shook my head, brushing it off. "It's probably just a lack of rest. I'll be fine after a nap." Sophia extended her hand to feel my forehead, her movements gentle but uninvited. As she did, a scar snaking along her waist caught my eye. The sight of it stung, deepening my confusion. In my previous life, Sophia and I had been as close as sisters, practically inseparable. She was gentle, generous, and had cared for me since our university days. Many even mistook us for actual siblings. After graduation, I had repeatedly invited her to take on key positions at my company, trusting her implicitly. but she had always declined, insisting that friendship had nothing to do with material benefits and that we were simply kindred spirits. Last year, when I had fallen critically ill and needed a kidney transplant, she had donated one of hers without hesitation, saving my life. I often thought that heaven had blessed me with such a true friend, but who could have imagined that the person I trusted most would destroy my life in just a few hours? And what chilled me even more was that my mother, who had doted on me all my life, would become an accomplice in my downfall. Where had everything gone so wrong? There were only 3 hours left until Ethan's studio explosion. After Sophia bid us goodbye, my mother left as usual to play cards. I had no leads, no answers. Desperately, I got in my car and drove to Ethan's studio, parking a safe distance away to watch from the shadows. The thought of what was to come filled me with anguish. Soon, I would be accused of murdering my husband, cursed and abandoned by everyone. I would endure inhumane torment in a dark, damp prison cell, only to die miserably in the end. The memory of that ending tore at my heart, and I wished I could storm into the studio and stop everything. In my previous life, everything had happened so suddenly, too fast for me to think or react. But now, heaven had given me another chance. This time, I would not let anyone control my fate. As I stared at the light shining through the windows of the studio, my mind raced. Why had Ethan suddenly accused me of cheating and gambling? Where had his so-called evidence and the hospital diagnosis come from? If Sophia had truly considered me her best friend, why hadn't she come to me when she first noticed something was wrong? Why had she waited until everything had exploded to point fingers? And my mother, after all these years of us depending on each other, how could she stand with Sophia after everything happened? A whirlwind of questions churned in my mind, tangled like a ball of threads I couldn't unravel. I leaned against the steering wheel, trying to calm myself, racing against time. I carefully pieced together every clue from my past life. It took me an hour and a half before I felt like I'd caught hold of a faint thread of truth. Without hesitation, I contacted my assistant. No matter what it takes, investigate these matters immediately. After hanging up, I felt restless. My palms were damp with cold sweat, and every second felt like it stretched into eternity. My heart pounded violently against my ribs. Just as I was on the verge of suffocating, my assistant finally replied. Seeing the results of the investigation, my entire body trembled. As expected, everything was aligning with what I had suspected. I immediately gave specific instructions. Do exactly as I say. Make sure no third party finds out about this. Once the arrangements were set, I finally exhaled deeply and opened my stock trading app. It was time to set my plan into motion. I transferred all my available funds into my securities account and began to make calculated moves. I had barely completed the transfer when my phone started buzzing incessantly. It was Sophia. Her calls and messages flooded my phone relentlessly. Yow! Ethan's studio exploded. Hurry and come identify the body. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? This is no time to disappear. Annoyed and overwhelmed, I added Sophia's number to my block list, cutting off all her contact methods. Just as I finalized my last large trade, the headlines on major platforms exploded. Heiress murders husband for inheritance. Scandal. Wealth and betrayal. Husband killing wife. Social media was flooded with curses and insults directed at me. Influencers were streaming live from the explosion site, their cameras capturing Sophia sobbing uncontrollably. It's all my fault, she cried into the camera. The first time Ethan told me Yao had threatened his life, I should have gone to the police. If only I'd exposed her true nature earlier, maybe this tragedy could have been avoided. I just can't understand. She's already so wealthy. Why would she kill for money? Poor Ethan. He was blown up. How much pain and despair must he have felt in his final moments? Her words were vivid and gut-wrenching, drawing sympathy and outrage from viewers. She even played a recording of a phone conversation with Ethan. His voice, filled with fear and sorrow, resonated through the live stream. I never imagined Yao could be such a terrifying woman. She's been sleeping around with countless men behind my back, gambling away all my salary and savings. We could have just divorced peacefully, but she had to threaten my life. If something ever happens to me, make sure to report her. She's too cruel. Buzzwords like wealthy betrayal, murderous wife, And husband's tragic end caused the live stream's viewership to skyrocket, quickly reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers. Amid the sea of accusations, my mother suddenly arrived at the scene, clutching the charred remains of Ethan's ashes. She broke down in uncontrollable sobs. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I failed you as a mother-in-law." Her sudden appearance sent the live stream into a frenzy. Wobbling to her feet, she turned to face the cameras and shouted angrily, "I told her so many times to stay away from the casino, but she wouldn't listen. Taking all her husband's money and gambling it away wasn't enough. She even had affairs. And now she's killed him. She lost tens of millions gambling. And that still wasn't enough for her. She had to take his life, too. You're nothing but a gambling addict and a monster. How could I have given birth to someone as shameless as you?" My mother's tearful accusations completely ignited public outrage. Social media platforms were instantly flooded with condemnation. Women are terrifying. Sweet on the surface. Knives in the back. A gambling addict and a murderer. Someone like her deserves the death penalty. Poor Ethan. He married a gambler only to get blown up. What terrible luck he had. In an instant, I became a public enemy. Everyone wanted to play the role of a righteous avenger, eager to see me punished on the spot. Yet, standing once again in the face of overwhelming condemnation, I felt strangely calm. I stepped out of the car, composed, and walked straight into the raging crowd. "My dear mother, husband, and best friend, today, I've come to send you all on your way." Every major gossip account had plastered my photo all over the internet. As soon as I arrived at the explosion site, online influencers recognized me. Cameras flashed furiously as reporters and live streamers crowded around me. Suddenly, someone threw a coin at me. "How dare you show your face here? You filthy wretch. Aren't you afraid of retribution?" The moment one person acted, the crowd's fury erupted like a wildfire. People began hurling whatever they could grab in my direction. "You disgusting gambler. How dare you come here pretending to be pitiful? You make me sick. Women like her ruin men's lives and families. Lock her up. Or better yet, execute her. She's not even worth the food it takes to keep her alive." Unfazed, I calmly raised my phone, capturing the faces of everyone hurling insults and objects at me. "Keep it up," I thought. "When I drag you to court myself, let's see if you can still smirk." The commotion in the crowd finally caught my mother's attention. She rushed over, and in front of everyone, slapped me hard across the face. "Yow, how could I have raised such a heartless creature? Why didn't you listen to me? After marriage, you were supposed to settle down, but you've only gotten worse. Ethan treated you so well. How could you do something like this to him? I won't even be able to face your father when I die." My mother's hysterical cries were accompanied by endless streams of tears. In her eyes, my very existence was an indelible stain on her life. Even though I had already endured this humiliation in my past life, I had prepared myself mentally for this moment. Still, standing here now, facing the woman who had raised me for 30 years with so much sacrifice, only to see her push me into the abyss, I couldn't stop the sharp pain in my chest. Before I could say a word, Sophia forced her way through the crowd, joining in with righteous indignation. "Yow, I've overlooked your past mistakes countless times. But this involves a life. I can't cover for you anymore. If you no longer had feelings for Ethan, you could have parted ways amicably. He's always been reasonable. Why did you have to drive him to his death? Where's your conscience?" The internet had already spread the story of Sophia donating her kidney to save my life. The crowd, fueled by her emotional appeal, immediately turned on me even harder, accusing me of betraying her kindness and deeming me unworthy of having such a loyal friend. Watching my mother and this so-called best friend take turns performing their act, I spoke coldly, cutting through the chaos. The studio explosion left nothing but rubble. "What makes you so sure the deceased is Ethan?" My gaze locked onto Sophia like a blade. Even I, his wife of 3 years who lived with him day and night, wouldn't jump to such a conclusion. "And how do you know this?" I asked coldly. "Do you understand my husband better than I do?" The moment those words left my mouth, Sophia's expression faltered, her composure slipping for just a second. Some in the crowd began to sense something was off. "That's true," someone murmured. "How can anyone confirm something so important without the family being involved?" A best friend being so concerned about someone else's husband? Feels a bit strange, doesn't it? Another person muttered. Sophia quickly adjusted herself, adopting a fragile and pitiful demeanor. I understand you want to escape responsibility, she said, her voice trembling. But I've always been genuine with you. Yeah. And now, you're trying to pin this mess on me. She raised her phone, pointing it at the rubble of the explosion site. The screen displayed an image of a twisted, charred wedding ring, the same design as the one on my finger. My mother tried to force out a few tears, her voice breaking into anguished sobs. How many more people do you want to harm? Yeah? Sophia has been so good to you. She even gave up her kidney for you. And this is how you repay her. Sophia dramatically dropped to the ground, wailing loudly. Have some conscience. Yeah. Stop being so stubborn. Confess your crimes. And I'll make sure we get the best lawyer to help you. Maybe the court will show mercy. The crowd's emotions were reignited, their voices growing louder as they demanded the police arrest me on the spot. Meanwhile, the livestream chat was filled with nothing but insults, calling me an ungrateful monster. I chuckled softly, unfazed. Walking up to the cameras, I held up my phone, revealing the photos my assistant had just sent me. My dear best friend has indeed been good to me, I said, my tone sharp and biting. Not only did she donate a kidney, but she also gifted me something else. Her boyfriend of many years, starting back in middle school. The photos documented over a decade of memories. There were graduation pictures of Sophia and Ethan, intimate studio portraits of the two of them as a couple, and even recent screenshots of financial transactions Ethan had made to Sophia, along with their private messages. I turned to Sophia, my eyes cold and piercing. You meticulously planned to become my best friend, deliberately molding Ethan into the perfect partner for me. You really went to great lengths, didn't you? I used to naively believe Ethan was my soulmate, the one meant for me. He seemed to know everything about me, matching every preference I had. But now, looking back, such perfection is suspect. There are no soulmates in this world, just those who manipulate their way into your heart for their own gain. As I displayed the photos one by one, Sophia's panic flickered briefly across her face. Although she quickly masked it, the millions of viewers in the livestream caught the fleeting moment. The online crowd erupted into chaos. This is insane. She's been plotting this for years. Ethan deserved what he got. But that best friend? She's no better. Who's the real culprit here? Despite the mounting accusations, Sophia's thick skin kept her steady. She quickly recovered, putting on her usual pitiful act. Fine, she admitted reluctantly. I won't deny that Ethan and I had something in the past. We were young back then, and it didn't work out. We broke up. When I saw you two get together later, I supported it. I didn't mention it because I didn't want to make things awkward for everyone, Sophia said, her voice soft and full of false sincerity. I'm really doing this for your own good. Her performance was flawless. My mother quickly chimed in to support her, trying to redirect the blame. Yeah, stop being so stubborn. Even if Sophia and Ethan did something wrong, it doesn't justify taking a life. You're my only daughter. How could I ever harm you? Their coordinated act once again turned the crowd's anger back toward me, accusing me of murdering my husband. The onlookers and livestream viewers, unaware of the truth, erupted with fresh waves of outrage, hurling insults at me. That moment, my disappointment far outweighed my anger. I stared directly at my mother and asked, Mom, am I really your only child? Her expression froze instantly. She opened her mouth to argue but was rendered speechless when she saw the photos on my phone. It was a DNA test report, clearly proving a blood relationship between Sophia and my mother. My mother's eyes were fixed on the report as her face turned ashen, her breath quick and uneven. I handed the evidence over to the police, speaking calmly. Before marrying my father, my mother had a child with a local thug and gave birth to Sophia. Unable to endure the domestic violence, she escaped to this city. Over the years, she's been secretly sending money to Sophia and even arranged for her to attend the same university as me. The staff responsible for processing her school records are listed in her file. A simple investigation will confirm everything. This unexpected revelation left the police momentarily stunned, but they nodded repeatedly, promising to verify the details immediately. The drama unfolding at the scene and on the livestream caused an uproar. Shocked comments flooded in. Whoa. The mom is this ruthless. This whole family is a mess. The real wife's luck couldn't be worse. But at least she's smart enough to expose them. My God. How can a mother betray her own daughter like this? Terrifying. Amid the chaotic chatter, my mother, who had just been standing on the moral high ground, was now flustered and panicked, holding back her tears. She lunged forward, trying to snatch my phone. What is this nonsense? I only have one daughter. You. This DNA test is fake. You ungrateful brat. Are you trying to ruin your own mother? I let out a cold chuckle, my lips curling into a faint smile. Mom, the real show is just getting started. I had anticipated her denial and already prepared for it. I had tracked down the very thug who had fathered Sophia years ago. Right on cue. My assistant sent me a video call request. I accepted, and on the screen appeared the weathered, menacing face of a man in his 60s. Pointing at the camera, the man began shouting curses. You rotten woman. You ran off with my money all those years ago and left me with nothing but this ungrateful brat. And now you two are living the high life. Huh? You think you can just get rid of me? Dream on. His ranting grated on my nerves, so I quickly ended the call. Turning to my mother, I said with a meaningful smile, your old flame will be here soon. You'll have plenty of time to catch up. My words drained all the color from my mother's face. She staggered, nearly losing her balance. The secrets she had buried so deeply for years were now laid bare for all to see. Seeing my mother rendered speechless, Sophia immediately stepped in to support her and then turned to me, yelling furiously, You heartless wretch. Are you trying to kill her out of spite? Stop changing the subject. The fact that you murdered someone is indisputable, Sophia declared, her voice brimming with false confidence. The police found your fingerprints and necklace at the scene. You can't escape this. Get ready to rot in jail. As expected, the easily swayed crowd once again fell for her narrative. Gossip was momentarily set aside, replaced by a chorus of moral judgment directed at me. Fine. Sisters fight. But why go this far? Poor Ethan. He's the real victim here. He didn't even know what hit him. This whole family is a nightmare. The men always end up with the worst luck. Look at her. She can't even be bothered to pretend to cry. How cold-blooded. When my dog died, I cried for days. Seeing her strategy to deflect blame was working, Sophia faced the cameras and started sobbing pitifully, trying to stir up more outrage. Does having money make you untouchable? Just because you're rich doesn't mean you can take someone's life. Justice will prevail, and the law will ensure Ethan's memory is honored. I was done watching her theatrics. Without hesitation, I cut through her performance. Save your tears. Ethan isn't dead. All the evidence you've been parading around was deliberately planted by him. Did you honestly think your plan was flawless? Did you really think everyone else was a fool? The entire scene fell silent, the air heavy with tension before the crowd erupted in murmurs and speculation. Sophia, trying to maintain her composure, pointed at the scattered ashes and shouted, How can a dead man be fake? Are the wedding rings fake too? All eyes turned to me, waiting to see how I would unravel this mess. I clapped my hands twice, and a dusty off-road vehicle pulled up nearby. From it emerged my most trusted assistant, escorting Ethan, whose face was battered and bruised, right into the view of the cameras. Without a word, I walked up to Ethan and slapped him hard across the face. Ethan had come from a poor background, with no education to his name. The only reason he ever entered my world was because he happened to save me by taking me to the hospital after an accident. Out of consideration for his pride, I funded road construction and housing in his hometown, endured the insults of his unreasonable parents, and even invested in his studio to give him a respectable identity. For 5 years of marriage, all I ever wanted was sincerity, but in the end, not even that was real. The happiness I thought I had was nothing but a web of lies. A deeper investigation revealed that every weekend Ethan claimed to be working overtime. He was actually staying at Sophia's place. They even had a 3-year-old child together. The cruelest twist? My ever-so-loving mother had known about it all along. Not only did she know, but she actively helped them cover it up. While I was risking my life for the family business, they were enjoying cozy family time in the home I had meticulously built. You. How did you find out? Ethan asked, his head hanging low. Avoiding my gaze, I sneered. This morning, when you kissed me, you reeked of jasmine. I hate jasmine-scented perfume. You know that. But Sophia loves it. Doesn't she? I even bought her a few bottles myself. The smallest details often reveal the biggest truths. That scent was all I needed to uncover your lies. I glanced at Sophia, who stood frozen, her face pale. From there, I had my assistant dig into your history. It didn't take long to gather all the evidence. And from there, everything else unraveled. I accidentally uncovered the hidden connection between my mother and Sophia. And based on my experiences in the previous life, I pieced together their likely conspiracy. Acting quickly, I hired a private investigator to dig into their financial transactions over the past few years. The investigation led to a shocking discovery. Ethan, who was presumed dead, was alive and well, hidden in an underground studio rented by Sophia. The alleged victim now stood before me, unharmed, completely shattering the accusation that I had murdered my husband. In front of everyone, the elaborate lies woven by Sophia and my mother collapsed like a house of cards, and their conspiracy was utterly exposed. I handed Ethan and the evidence I had collected over to the authorities, confident that the law would restore my innocence. As Sophia was about to be loaded into a police car, she erupted into a hysterical fit. Why? Why is it that you've always had everything handed to you? You've always been the center of attention, getting whatever you wanted. And me? I couldn't even eat a full meal. That old bastard beat me every day. Even if I have to die, I'll drag you to hell with me. Her deranged and twisted outburst made me scoff coldly. What shocked me more was my mother's reaction. She actually agreed with her, wearing gloves and glaring at me with venomous eyes. My mother sneered. You've lived in comfort all these years. What's wrong with letting Sophia enjoy some of it too? You owe her. You ungrateful wretch. You even dared to go after your own mother. I looked at her, the woman who once loved and cherished me, and now I could barely recognize her, remembering my previous life, when I had been their pawn, manipulated and discarded, filled me with bitterness. I had been innocent, yet my mother and Sophia had schemed to throw me into prison, while I endured inhumane torment in a dark cell. They had taken over everything I worked so hard to build, living their lives without a shred of guilt. Now that my mother had severed the bond of 30 years between us, I saw no reason to hold on to even a sliver of pity for her. My voice was cold as ice as I said, the suffering Sophia endured was caused by your mistakes when you were young. Why should I be the one to pay for it? This debt was yours to repay, not mine. My mother, realizing her arguments were useless, resorted to spewing curses. I remained calm as I handed over the evidence that proved crucial to solving the case. Once in custody, Ethan and Sophia's true colors were exposed. In desperation to lessen their sentences, they began blaming each other. It turned out that Sophia, upon learning the truth about her parentage, grew resentful. She convinced my mother and Ethan to conspire against me, crafting an intricate scheme. Their plan was to frame me, send me to prison, and have my mother inherit my wealth legally. Then they would all flee the country to live a luxurious life together. But they underestimated me. I had uncovered their carefully orchestrated plot. The body found at the explosion site was not Ethan's, but that of a homeless man with mental disabilities. Sophia had drugged him and trapped him in the studio just before the explosion. The three of them now faced the full force of the law, awaiting harsh punishment for their crimes. As for me, I felt utterly drained, both physically and emotionally. I sold off all my assets, freeing myself from any lingering attachments. With financial freedom finally within my grasp, I embarked on a journey around the world. This time, nothing and no one could stop me.